you know that Melbourne University is ranked 13th globally, whilst Monash University is ranked 37th? And so you might think that Melbourne University is the better Victorian university to attend, but that's not exactly the case. Let me try and explain why. Now look, I may not be from Melbourne, but I do know a thing or two about university options and how important they are. You can check out my video on Sydney's best universities here if you don't believe me. Now when it comes to Monash and Melbourne University, both universities are great from a ranking standpoint, but they're actually completely different in terms of university experience. Now I've said this before and I'll say it again, the best university isn't the one with the highest ranking. And it's because there are so many contributing factors that make up your university experience and therefore that you need to consider. So if you're a Victorian student or you're any other student in Australia or internationally and you're considering Melbourne and Monash University but you can't pick between the two, this video will cover 3 of those other contributing factors besides academics that I think you should definitely consider, including location convenience, campus culture, and course structure. So without further ado, let's make sure you pick the correct university for you. Now I said this when I was comparing Sydney's best universities, but I honestly think one of the most underrated factors that students never really consider when selecting a university is commute time and the type of environment the university fosters. Now, because I don't know much about Melbourne,
you're so stupid!
I had to do some digging, but I realized that Melbourne University is actually near Parkville, which I believe is literally on the doorstep of the Melbourne CBD. And then based on Google Maps, I found that trams run along Swanston Street. You have plenty of accompanying train stations nearby, but also you're surrounded by things like cafes, museums, and the iconic State Library. Now, Monash Clayton, on the other hand, is about 30 minutes out from the CBD, and it's definitely got more of a suburban, quieter feel. It's got plenty of bus routes that can take you to and from the university. It even has its own dedicated Clayton station, but you're not stumbling into the CBD between classes. Now, some students might assume that the closer you are to the city, the better your university experience is going to be, but that is not always the case because it largely depends on what you value as a student. You know, if you thrive in a very busy, fast-paced environment and you want easy access to things like jobs, nightlife, making spontaneous plans maybe, then Melbourne's university location is almost perfect. But if you want a campus that maybe feels like an actual campus where you're not having to dodge peak hour traffic just to grab lunch, then Monash's suburban vibe might be exactly what suits you best. So instead of just looking at a university ranking, here are 2 things to consider. Number 1, map out your commute from where you live. And number 2, think about the actual campus environment you're after. Because if you can nail the commute time and you can avoid the mental fatigue that comes with being in an environment that doesn't necessarily align with you, you will very much better enjoy your university experience. Okay, so now campus culture is one of my favorite factors to consider when selecting university because honestly, it comes down to personal preference. So there's no right or wrong answer. Now, Melbourne University apparently has over 200 clubs and societies. And their O week is massive. And because you're right in the city, your social life doesn't just happen on campus, but also crosses over to Melbourne's cafes, bars, galleries, and live music events. But the flip side of this is some students feel the campus life can be a little diluted because everyone's kind of scattered across the city. And so it's a lot harder to build that tight-knit community, especially when everyone is just kind of coming and then going. Now, Monash Clayton, on the other hand, has just over 100 student-run clubs, and they put on events like the Winter Carnival, which brings the whole campus together. And because it's much more self-contained, there is definitely a better sense of community. You know, people hang around campus a lot more often, so you run into similar faces all the time, and it feels a lot more connected. So I think the important thing to keep in mind when thinking about the cultural scene at both of these universities is the following. You know, Melbourne University is perfect if you want the city to be part of your university experience. Monash, on the other hand, is great if you want a campus that feels like a campus. You know, if you value the tight-knit community vibe where everyone's in the same bubble, then this university could work better. Now, my best suggestion here is to actually visit these campuses, not during O week, but on a random Tuesday, and just go and get a feel for what the campus is like on a day-to-day basis. The reason I say this is because you're going to be spending a minimum of 3 years at any one of these universities. So you want to make sure it's somewhere you actually want to spend time for the next few years. Now, the last factor you definitely want to consider is teaching style and course structure, because Melbourne University and Monash University don't just teach differently, but they actually approach degrees with completely different philosophies. So Melbourne University uses something called the Melbourne Model. So this means most students will do a 3-year general bachelor's degree followed by a specialized master's degree. Now, the upside of this model is it seems to give you a lot of flexibility. So you can explore, change your mind, take on breadth subjects outside your major. And so it's perfect if you're not 100% sure on what it is you exactly want to do after high school. Now, the downside of this model is you're going to be committing more years of study. And so if you already kind of know what you want to be doing in life, then this model can be very efficient because it prevents you from just kind of getting into the workforce and doing your thing. Now, Monash, on the other hand, takes a very traditional route, something you would see across most universities, which is if you wanted to be a teacher, for example, you would just do a 4-year bachelor's degree in education and then you're done. Of course, you then have the choice to pursue further education like a master's degree. And also they offer double degrees, which again, Melbourne University doesn't offer. So you can actually study 2 fields at once, like law and commerce, for example, or engineering and science being some of the popular choices. Now, the downside of this model is you don't necessarily have the breathing room to explore. And so if you change your mind halfway through your degree, I think switching paths can be costly, both financially and timely. Now, if you are a little unsure about what it is you exactly want to be pursuing after high school, then the Melbourne model will be perfect for you because it gives you the breathing room to explore your options before locking something in. But if you know exactly what you're after and you want to dive straight into your field, then Monash's very direct and traditional approach might feel a lot better. So by the sounds of it, it looks like Monash and Melbourne University are both great university choices. Both will give you a world-class education and both will look incredible on your resume. And therefore the real question isn't which university is better, but which one will fit how you want to live, learn, and spend your time for the next few years. Now, if you want a deeper breakdown comparing specific courses, accommodation options, and career outcomes at both universities, I've linked the full comparison guide below, which you can find in the description. With Year 12 exams just around the corner, I'm wishing you the best of luck, and just remember when it comes to university choices, pick the one that aligns with you the best. Other than that, I will catch you in next week's video.